The Golden State Warriors have recently been stacking up on depth. They got a lot of bench players this offseason to really have depth everywhere. Recently, they got Kelly Oubre Jr., who I think will be a great fit for the Warriors. See, I don't like the term temporary replacement for Clay, but in some aspects, he will fill it in for Clay. He can do a little bit of everything on the offensive end, and he's a good defensive player. One thing the Warriors will always get from him is 100% effort. They also got Ken Bazemore, who has solidified himself as a 3 and D player throughout his career. They got Brad Wanamaker, who played well in his role in Boston. So let's see what the Warriors had last season and how it will be useful this season. So if you didn't watch last season's Warriors, I don't blame you. However, I did see glimpses of hope of the future in that injury-plagued season. So, like I mentioned before, they have a ton of depth now. They have a bunch of guys who know how to play well in their role, from Kevon Looney to Damian Lee and other players. So they know what their job is when they come into the game. And then they have Eric Pascal, who really showed out, and he played really tough, and he lived up to his name, Pascanimal. So out of all of the players last year, I really liked him and Marquise Chris. See, him, Damian Lee, and Andrew Wiggins were really the main lethal scoring options out there. So I really think that Eric and Damian would be great sixth and seventh men coming off the bench because they sort of are like instant offense. With Eric being the guy who attacks the rim and Damian who spaces the floor, hits the threes and floaters. But let's talk about Marquise Chris right here. So I really think that he has shown a lot of improvement, and this really seemed to happen after he was waived. He started to play with more energy, and I really enjoyed seeing those alley oops, the posters, the mean blocks, the putbacks, you name it, he did it. Him and James Wiseman will probably play the same role of being the paint presence out there. And one area that I think he can still improve on is keeping his emotions in check. See, he's gonna be a really important piece out there. Now I understand that it's just him playing really hard out there, but like if he's gonna be an important rotation piece, and he needs to keep his emotions in check. He may even start a few games over Wiseman. So all in all, it's important that he really keeps his emotion in check, knowing that he will be a pretty big contributor off the bench. Now let's talk about Andrew Wiggins and Jordan Poole for a second here. So let's be honest about Andrew. He's kind of become this forgotten man this offseason, and it might be good for him that he would have this much pressure off of him. For Andrew, when he was on the Warriors, he really seemed to want to run point guard out there, and he tried to set his teammates up when he attacked the rim. That seemed like a really, really underrated aspect of his game, and he will fit in this offense really well. Defensively, I think he can still improve this season now that Draymond is back and healthy, and that he will help Andrew on the defensive end by a lot. There are three questions that people will keep on asking about him. Will his three-point shot improve? Will his shot selection improve? Will he stop taking those long contested mid-range shots? My answers to these questions are I don't know if he will improve, honestly. I don't know if he will improve on his three-point shot. I think his shot selection will improve, but he won't stop taking those long twos because that's just a part of his game. We saw this against Toronto last season when Steph came back, that Andrew was able to operate better with Steph on the floor and his shooting looked better. Now, it is only one game, but I do think that he will shoot better from the field. It won't be monumentally better, but I think he will improve. Now, as for Jordan Poole, he had probably one of the worst seasons in NBA history. He shot 33%, and he shot really poorly from the three. Part of this comes from his questionable shot selection, where in college basketball you can sort of get away from doing that, and not a lot of people will question you. But in the NBA, it's not like that. The teams will scheme you, they will see what you're most comfortable at, and because of that, his shooting percentage did not look good. But there are two positives that I did take away from his season. He's a shooter, and so he will keep on shooting. He's got the confidence in his shot selection, and that is fine. That is what the Warriors were missing these past few years. This this consistent contributor off the bench. And the second thing I noticed is after the Andrew Wiggins trade, we really got to see this playmaker version of Jordan Poole, and he looked really comfortable out there doing that. And his shooting percentage actually rose. He didn't have to play the catch and shoot role as much. Now, part of why this happened is because the Warriors didn't really have a ball handler, and so the coach trusted him with the ball, and he produced. His confidence came up. For example, against the Lakers in Andrew Wiggins' debut as a Warrior, Jordan had 17 points and 5 assists. We didn't get to see this when D'Lo was there, but performances like these gave us a glimpse of hope for the future. I hope that Jordan Poole can develop his game further and that he can play this role off the bench. Him and Brad can both play the same role if they're playing together. Now let's talk about Draymond here. As a Warriors fan and a Draymond Green fan, I kind of didn't like that name, but let's be honest, he deserved it. Now I could say that it was an injury-plagued season. As a Warriors fan, there was really no one out there. But I really wanted Draymond to start looking for his own shot. Last season, I really saw the truth about him. He needs Steph and Clay to really be effective. He is a really good passer and playmaker, but part of that comes from playing with two Hall of Fame shooters who move off the ball really well. Defensively, I'm not too worried about that. I know he had a career worst defensive rating, but I'm sure he will go back to his normal defensive self. Part of that was because of the lineups that were just out there, since there were a lot of inexperienced players who didn't know what to do defensively. Part of that was also because they really lacked in rebounding. Do I think he will become an all-star in next season? No. But I do think that he can do well since he wouldn't have any pressure offensively and that he can come back to his defensive self. I want to talk about Kevon Looney here a bit. I really started to find out about him in 2017-18 season, especially in the playoffs. He doesn't really wow you in anything, but he plays really hard. He seemed to really impress me during the 2017-18 playoffs and 2018-19 playoffs, where he started a lot of games after Damian Jones got injured. So he had great games in the 2019 playoffs, especially against the Rockets and Trailblazers, where he was able to do his job, guard his man and get the boards and score on the putbacks, pick and rolls, you name it. He did it. He did his job. In the finals, he did seem tentative, but that was because he suffered an injury to his rib or something like that, or his chest. He was not supposed to come back in the finals, but he did, and he looked really tentative to try and box out Marc Gasol because of his injury. His neuropathic condition worsened during the offseason. Neuropathy is a disorder from nerve damage outside of the brain and spinal cord. And he had it pretty much for his whole career. That's why he didn't really play much in the 2016-17 season. He was able to play through this after his second season, but it got worse, and so he had to sit out for a lot of the 2019-20 season. In the games that he did play this season, he seemed really tentative to attack the rim. Now that he is all rested, I expect that we see the Kevon Looney that we usually used to see. He will have the toughest job in guarding the opposing center and trying to get the rebounds over him. And this will happen when James Wiseman is on the bench, really. So I really think that the Warriors have developed Damian Lee really well. Who he not only played as a shooter, but he sometimes played as a facilitator. He seemed to do really well starting for the Warriors last season, and I really think he could be good at either spot off the bench. We really got to see his offensive package develop into a more all-around game, and I think that he would be a great seventh man off the bench. So there were a few players that I didn't talk about, like Juan Toscano Anderson, Michael Mulder, and Alan Smailagic. Juan and Michael did not show the fear of the big moment. For Juan, it was diving for the loose ball. He's a very gritty player and he likes to get his hands dirty. He didn't average, like, he averaged, like, what, 5 points in college? But he still got a spot because he's a very gritty player. Like, he's a very gritty player. Uh, so he got signed to a two-way contract, which is fine for him. For Michael, he seemed very confident in his shot. For example, in the game against Philly, I think, he hit five triples, including one that gave them the late lead. He's not afraid of the moment. He's the type of player to come in and do what's asked of him, whether to space the floor or set the offense up or anything like that. Now, as for Allen, we saw a lot of inexperience and growth. He's what, 19? And I think that's fine. I think he's supposed to grow. At first, he did seem tentative against other big men, and he wasn't really confident. But as time went on and his minutes increased, he seemed comfortable with posting up and playing back to the basket. He also showed slight improvement in his three-point shot, which really helped him and will help him develop his game further down the stretch. My question is, how will these guys be utilized in this new Warriors team? Will they be part of the third string or will they not be utilized at all? I really do hope that these guys will eventually get to play significant minutes, but I don't really know how the roster will be constructed and how the minutes will be assigned. Now, as for Kent Bazemore and Brad Wanamaker, I think this is the veteran presence that the Warriors needed. And I am putting Brad in this because he also did play internationally from 2011. They have a they basically have a sense of the moment and they will rise up. They aren't excellent shooters, but they will rise up to make that clutch shot in tight situations. Now, there are a few questions for this upcoming offseason. Not offseason, I meant season. The first question is, will James Wiseman will he live up to his hype? Will he do well against other centers? And so the answer to that is I think he will do well. I don't have too high of a hopes for him, but I think he can do well. He's 7'1", 247 pounds. He will probably be able to hold his own against other centers, but he will show his rookie mistakes, and this is where the developing staff comes, where the Warriors have an excellent development staff. They really help players find what they're good at and help expand their game. And so I think over time, if James Wiseman puts in the work, we will see a more polished center. He won't be a Shaq or a Hakeem or a David Robinson, but he will contribute in many ways to this team, such as rebounding or having an inside presence. And the second one is, will Steph be back to his normal greatest shooter of all time self? And the answer to that is I really hope he does. I am a fan of Steph and his game. Obviously, what happened to him last season was significant, but it was on his non-shooting hand. Also, this season seemed like a blessing in disguise for him because it was like a rest after him making five straight finals appearances. Obviously, with his injury history, it still is a concern, but the coaching staff will probably manage his minutes and try to play him probably about 20 to 30 minutes. I think that's what is the best for him. For the Warriors, it seems like they want to get to the playoffs healthy and not worry about anything else. So, another question I have is, who will have a lot of weight on their shoulders to really perform really well? Uh, will it be Andrew Wiggins or Kelly Oubre Jr.? My answer is Kelly Oubre Jr. Now, I'm not gonna say that Andrew Wiggins won't be important. I think he will be important in other areas. I have more hope for Kelly as an offensive player than I do for Andrew. For Kelly, he's like a jack of all trades, master of none type of player. He can hit the three, the mid range, and he has the ability to drive to the rim. Um, in this Steph centric offense, you need a guy that can really just take the pressure off of him. I have I have more hope that Kelly can play with a better consistency than with Andrew Wiggins. I am not saying that they don't need Andrew, but I prefer Kelly over Andrew as my go-to options. I want to talk about Nico Mannion for a little bit. So I haven't heard too much about him, but people kept on saying that he is a steal in the draft, that, oh, the Warriors will be much better. Based off of that, I had and still have hope for him. He did not impress me statistically this preseason, but he played a key role in that comeback against the Sacramento Kings in the second preseason game. He had a floater to tie the game. He had a clutch steal in which they extended the lead to 4 on the fast break, and he had a few nice times. So he's not going to be any type of like standout player, but I can see him play more of a JJ Barea or Ricky Rubio style, where he looks to set this offense up rather than try to do his own thing. He's going to compete, and he will be scrappy, given the minutes that he will be given. So now I haven't heard much about Brad Wanamaker. If there are any Celtics fans that have seen him play that are watching this video right now, go ahead and tell me about him. The only thing I heard is last year he led the league in free throw percentage, and that will be crucial in clutch situations when it is a free throw game. Now, from what I heard about him, or from what I read about him, he seems like a journeyman playing internationally from a lot of teams. He seems like he can bring experience to the table. And from what I see, from what I have seen in preseason, he'll be trying to set up the offense, and he won't necessarily do anything else. I cannot say anything about him right now because I don't know a whole lot about him as a player. So overall, I think this offseason was good for the Warriors, getting a lot of players so that they have a lot of depth. I look forward to this season with this new team, and I want to see how far they get this season. Now, before I go, I want to break down the Warriors versus Nets game. So I was really disappointed in that game. So all of you know, the Warriors want to help build they want to help build homes for the homeless people from all of the bricks that they had in this game. I'm joking right there. But it seemed like they couldn't make a shot to save themselves. We got a bad Kelly Oubre Jr. 2016 NBA Finals Game 7 Steph. And Andrew, I'm going to settle for long contested twos with no ball movement Wiggins. They shot 14 of 51 from the field and 4 of 22 from the 3. Also put in the fact that Kyrie was hitting every single shot and KD was being KD for a little bit. That's a bad combination right there. The Warriors weren't that bad defensively. It's just they miscommunicated a lot. Like they left 3-point shooters open from 3. But there were moments in which they played really good defense, but the Nets just hit the tough shot. Like Kyrie was being double teamed at the baseline by Juan and someone else, and he still hit the fadeaway shot. And I was like, damn. Even if Draymond was back, it would have been a little closer, but I think the Nets would have still won. The bench was straight up not good to the point where I was like, can they still make roster cuts? I know I said Juan and Jordan can contribute, but I think they should go to the G League and develop the game further. Michael Mulder wasn't bad. I think he should get a minutes increase. I had high hopes for James Wiseman, if not for scoring, at least for rebounding. Nope, he couldn't do that. He seemed so slow, and he's kind of like JaVale, a late leaper. I think Looney or Chris should get starts where they are facing a fast lineup with a fast center, because for the whole game until the garbage time, it looked like James Wiseman was slow. He was a step slow everywhere. Part of defense is defensive rebounding, and everyone looked timid and didn't box out. So for the season, everyone needs to focus on communicating defensively, rebounding, and moving the ball. I know it was the first game, but I was disappointed in this effort from everyone. Thank you for watching this video, and I hope you like this video right here.